It doesn't matter how Africa and Africans are depicted in literature and the media. Well, it doesn't matter how other countries are depicted in the media as well. Of course it does, but more than Africa? I don't think so. Africa is a continent that is constantly being depicted in a negative way by the media, focusing only on a single story. A single story can be said to be when one tells a story from only one perspective, which can risk a critical misunderstanding of the story as a whole. An example will be an article that I had a chance to read, Why Africans Worry About How Africa is Portrayed in the Media, based on a documentary done a Nigerian political editor, Remi Adekoya, a response to a documentary based on a demographic boom in Uganda. The interviewer asked, does the whole of Africa have this demographic problem? From this I thought to myself, you're clearly referring to a documentary in Uganda. Why conclude that the whole continent is the same way? From this I realized that it was nothing less than the way the media depicted African countries as one giant place. Individuals that focus on a single story are usually those that have never experienced a range of ethnic groups or tend to see things from only one angle, while obstructing other perspectives. These individuals could be believed to have fallen in the false consensus effect. What is false consensus effect? According to study.com, the false consensus effect is defined as a type of bias in which one believes her opinion is common and appropriate so that others may feel the same way. This leads to my next question, which is what impact do stereotypical images of Africa have on audiences? To answer this question, I would like you to just meditate on how it would feel if your country was represented like Africa. Starving, water storage, and poor living conditions. You see how it feels? Well, that's what some people feel in this continent. They see themselves worthless, and not because of how they are living, but how all these negative stereotypes are on the surface of the media. Not only that, but also the fact that people begin to devalue Africa even before they have a chance to step a foot in this place. With this said, if you're going to write about Africa, here are some stereotypes you should avoid. Here's how you write about Africa. Every country has its difficulty, but you can't just say the country's difficulty, but also try to help that country. First, I'm asking you to highlight positive as well as negative, but never neglect either one of them. Focus on overcoming these problems instead of just constantly bragging about them. And then third, write from your personal experience and facts rather than coming to a conclusion from media and other forms of publicity. Try to reach out to the locals for information and get their input, which would help your story to have different perspectives. Let me give you an example. The number one misconception about Africa is that Africa is a country. With this misconception, this is why the media portrays Africa as a whole. Let me show you. A nuclear bomb has killed everyone in Africa. But I am in Africa. Yes, the bomb has killed everyone in the city of Angola. It's a continent with 54 different countries, and it's large enough to fit the world's largest countries such as US, China, India, etc. When writing about Africa, mention a few of the countries so the audience can get it through their head that Africa is not a country. Make them realize that they cannot be more specific than saying Africa, especially when it's a report of the people, economy, or even other things. This leads to my next point. When referring to the struggles in Africa, be specific as in which place you are referring to. This is what can happen. there has been the spread of Ebola all over Africa. Oh my god, yeah, I'm gonna die.
No, don't do that, but rather specify where exactly this location is. Show the location geographically on a map, showing clearly where the neighboring countries are. Don't make it seem like the whole continent is in desperation, where they are combating abuse of power, hunger, and critical illness. Ebola is only a disease that has spread in Western Africa, in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And lastly, when giving a description of Africa, don't say or show a cliche sunset with wild animals in a vast location. This demonstration conveys to the reader that Africa has no population and merely just has animals walking around the desert. Rather, actually show the beautiful locations of Africa, such as the beautiful Khartoum, North Sudan, who has lost around 2 million people as of October 2014 due to its conflict between Army of Sudan and Sudan's People Liberation Movement North. Or Luanda, Angola, with one of the fastest economic growth in the world at 3.8% GDP growth in 2015 and to an expected 4.2 growth in 2016. This country has developed massively since the end of its 27-year civil war that ended in 2002. Rather than emphasizing on these stereotypes, take action like someone that knows a problem and wants to make a difference in that problem. Become aware of these problems and take action, just like the IMF who invested $390 million and an additional $100 million for debt relief of countries that suffered from the Ebola crisis in 2014. Or the World Bank that has invested nearly $1,698 per capita for education in 2014 to sub-Saharan countries.
Eric Thomas, a very motivational speaker, once said, "Pain is temporary. It may last for a minute, for an hour, for a day, or even a year. But eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. But if I quit, however, it would last forever." Living in Africa has taught me that it's not about what you have or what you don't have. It's about how you take this pain and use it to your advantage. There's not a lot of hurt that some Africans can feel, even though they have been through the struggles of life. No food, no water, homeless, even sickness. I bet every country does. To some extent, I think they perpetuate these images the way they do because Africa is seen as a very vulnerable place and they feel as if they have power over the whole continent. How do I feel about the perpetuation of stereotypes being an African myself? Well, at the end of the day, we all go to bed being criticized or not. Negative media coverage of Africa is only a way for people to comfort themselves and say that they feel remorse for Africa, as if it is the worst place for someone to live in and that there will never be development in this continent, even though they are always talking about one location. What I wonder is how long the world can be ignorant about these things and instead of feeling bad for Africa, actually take action. I wonder how much longer will they continue to devalue Africa and look for negative aspects and stereotypes. It's just a matter of time until this continent is economically developed as well as the level of human development. Who are you to say who we are or what we will become?